What's good, y'all? This is SA, and the beta version for my indie game, Guardians of RPG, is officially out on itch.io. Technically, it's been out for over a month, but I wanted to make a video showcasing everything I've worked on, everything that I've added since my last devlog video, and what plans I have for the game that will involve your help and expertise. So without further ado, let's get into it. If there's one thing about this game I'm really proud of, it's how the game looks. In previous versions, if the sprites weren't bad, they were low quality, and if they weren't low quality, they were fairly generic. Now, I have personalized character sprites that fit the look and feel of this game, as well as distinct differences between NPCs and main characters. On top of that, the lighting and the particle effects add so much ambiance to the game to the point that it no longer feels like an MVP glued together by spaghetti code. Now it's a quality game glued together by spaghetti code. All of the environments look very pretty, and there's a good chunk of activities to engage with even with the limited map size for this first arc in the game. And that's due to a lot of the new and updated features added, specifically the ability to engage with interactable objects. I've added new text boxes for when you interact with NPCs. I've added a better item drop system that encourages you to collect treasure boxes throughout the map. I've updated the medical center to allow them to heal you only a certain amount of times per day, with some cool animations. I've updated the shop feature to have dynamic pricing depending on the store you enter, and gave players the ability to sell their items to acquire more resources. I've updated the book feature to allow you to opt out of reading optional literature while you're exploring the game, and I've added a well mechanic that allows you to gain additional resources like water specific amounts of times per day. With these updated features, the game feels like it has better ways for you to play and interact with it. But I've also made updates to new features that weren't in previous versions of this game as well. A few months ago, I created the Wild Encounter feature that'll enable players to grind and face enemies in between different story beats. But so far, the Wild Encounter feature has only been able to spawn one enemy per encounter. Now, the Wild Encounter feature will be able to spawn up to 3 enemies per encounter. The Wild Encounter feature works when a player walks into the spawn field. Once the spawn field detects that the player is moving inside of it, it'll run a probability check for a wild encounter. For the new update, once it determines that you've triggered a wild encounter, it'll run another probability check for this 2 more times, with the odds of each subsequent encounter being less than the one before. If you end up triggering 2 or 3 wild encounters, then 2 or 3 enemies will appear from the spawn field. I know that this may make walking into spawn fields like the wild grass a bit intimidating, but to help with the incentive, I've also adjusted how gaining XP works in battle. In the past, the formula that determined your XP was done by taking a static number and multiplying it by the number of enemies you fought. Now, the formula also adds bonus points for if you defeated multiple enemies, and this applies even if you lost the entire battle. For example, if you defeated 2 out of 3 enemies, you still gain XP for the 2 enemies you defeated, and you still get the bonus points for those 2 enemies you defeated. But in addition to this XP system, I've updated another feature to the game that'll help you on your journey, which is the Player Companion feature. The Player Companion feature was initially the mechanic in the game that allowed certain NPCs to follow you around the map. But now there's an additional feature where these companions can fight alongside you when encountering wild enemies. This feature was never implemented in the past because I never had a wild encounter feature in previous versions of the game. But after making one, it's important that the NPCs you're on your journey with is able to fight with you when you're dealing with unavoidable hordes. For me, I like this because it also means that for certain wild areas, I can challenge the players and companions in exciting ways in the future. But there are even more battle updates for the NPCs besides this, and that's with the fighting logic. In previous versions of the game, the NPCs that you fight and fight alongside you were programmed to select a random move and a random target. This was done to save time while developing the MVP. But the thing is, the moves in my game can have drastically different consequences, and the battle can vary in either team's favor depending on what the move is and who that move is being used on. So when the NPCs choose random moves and targets that don't help them during battle, it can make them feel kind of dumb. There are times where you're in an intense battle with your companion, and instead of your companion selecting a move that will go for the kill, it opts to do the same stat changing move on itself for the 5th time in a row. And on the flip side, you had instances where opponents would choose a move that constantly healed their allies or constantly forfeited their turn by picking a move that wasn't going to help them over and over and over again. So for some playthroughs, the game would feel difficult because my companions were stupid, and in other playthroughs, the game would feel too easy because my enemies were stupid. That's why I decided to code in logic patterns for the NPCs. NPCs with the logic of 0 choose a random move in a random target. NPCs with the logic of 1 and 2 will roll two 20-sided dice. The first die determines if they'll use a random move or a specific move, and the second die determines if they'll choose a random target or a specific target. The difference between the two is that an NPC with the logic of 2 has weighted dice, so it makes it more likely for them to choose specific moves and targets. And finally, NPCs with a logic of 3 will always choose specific moves and targets. Most battle logics for NPCs would be determined by actual strategies and/or triggered by certain situations in the game. However, my algorithm simply focuses on what the best move and target would be in that current round. And what determines the best move is often dependent on weighted values that can change from round to round. If the NPC is more focused on saving elixir for this round, then they will more likely choose a move that costs less elixir. If the NPC is focused on knocking out the opponent, then they will choose a move that has high damage. And if the NPC is focused on helping their allies, then they'll choose a move to boost their or their allies' stats. And based on the move the NPC chooses, that determines the best target. If they choose a priority move, the NPC will target the fastest player with the hopes of going before them and/or making them flinch. If they choose a regular move, the NPC will target the player with the lowest health in the hopes of knocking them out. And yeah, I think you get the point. It's not super sophisticated, but it's close enough to where I feel like the battles will feel less like fighting robots and more like fighting actual characters. And last but not least, you can now save your player progress to the cloud. The way I used to save data was by saving it to a path on your computer called the persistent data path. And using that method just doesn't work reliably for WebGL games. On top of that, the way I implemented it would only allow one person to have data saved at a time per PC, which isn't good for people who share computers at home or at school. As a result, I decided to save everyone's data in the Unity Cloud. To create an account, all you would need to do is create a unique username followed by a pretty distinct password. I did think about adding emails and other stuff to the sign-up process, but I wanted to make creating an account as simple as possible, and I also didn't want to have too much of your data stored in the cloud either. What storing the data in a Unity Cloud will do for me is twofold. I want to get a feel for what people's playtime and playstyles are so that I can make better judgments on how to make the game better. And I also want to be able to make update changes to the game that will be more uniformed and clear. But if you still feel like that's too much data being stored in the cloud, I get it. So if you want to play without an account, you can click on the Play as a Guest button with the caveat that you won't save any game progress. I also have the option to have your account deleted if you no longer want to play the game or have your data stored in the cloud. And that's all I got for you guys today. All of these additions and updates to the game are made with the purpose of making the game a much more enjoyable experience. But that doesn't mean that the game is without its flaws or bugs, and that's why I need the help of you guys. The second part of the game will focus on 2 arcs in Toxic Trails that will push the narrative and make the game more interesting. But in order to get there, I need to ensure that the beta version of Arc 1 has a solid enough framework and architecture to stack more content on top of it. This is to prevent me from having to overhaul the entire game over and over again for each new story I add in the game. So my goal for the next few months is to get as many people as I can to help beta test and play the beta version for Guardians of RPG, which is where I need your expertise. If you're interested in playing Guardians of RPG or know someone who might be interested in it, the link for the game is in the description, or just type eocomics.itch.io. Anyone who beta tests the game by creating an account and leaving a review through the survey will have their credits in the game as being part of the QA team. This will really go a long way to making sure the game is ready for a much larger audience and that I can make more of this game sooner. If you want to show your support in another way, Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. As you can see, we're almost on our way to 1 million subscribers, which is really exciting. And yeah, I'll see y'all later. Peace.